Hello and welcome to the Driving Maul show. Yes, it's 8 p.m. on a Monday, and so that's when you can come and listen to us spout off about rugby on Facebook and YouTube. No longer the old Twitters, because you know what? They made us pay, and we don't make any money out of this, so we ain't paying you Twitter to broadcast on there. But we must turn on the on-air light. There we go. We're on air now. He says, "Oh, it doesn't turn on. What's going on?" There we go. It's on now. So we go. We're on air. We're live, and joining me is Cornflake. How you doing, sir?
I'm good. Now that I know whether we're live, I'm good to go. You know, I was trying to think before we started. I was trying to think of my controversial comment to start off the episode, but there wasn't enough rugby over the weekend, so I could just round off by saying it's been a good first up rest week for the real teams of World Rugby, right?
The real teams of World Rugby. Oh, dearie me. Well, you could argue that the two teams or the two of the teams that were playing this weekend did have a bit of a rest, looking at their performance, because it was not the best game of rugby that we've seen over this autumn internationals, but they weren't the only internationals playing. Did you know we had other games this weekend?
Nah.
No, because I mean the mighty Andorra fell to Malta by 3-10. So good win there for Malta.
That is a nail-biting game, 3-10. Take me back to the 90s.
Now, Luxembourg versus Croatia, 31-all. A draw. Now, if you're talking about... there you go. So that's... so there you go. So Simon says that there's some African qualifying tournaments going on this weekend. Has to Google to know more. I didn't. They're not even included in Rugby Pass. Rugby Pass is owned by World Rugby, so they should have all the games. Let's be honest. And they don't even have. They don't have them. But this isn't the end of the international window. We do still have another game coming up this coming weekend, which I'm sure we'll all be dialing into. It's 9:00 on Sunday morning. I don't know if Sky have got this one. But Mexico versus the Cayman Islands is this coming Sunday.
Can't wait.
I'll be honest. Go on.
Can't wait. I can't wait for that. Yeah, I'll be up at 8:30.
So you get your breakfast in before the 9:00 kickoff. Who are you backing, Mexico or the Cayman Islands?
Cayman Islands, definitely.
What?
100%. 100%. You always got to back the underdog.
They definitely are the underdog.
I say that. Oh, damn it! I said that not knowing who actually was the underdog in that fight.
Again, looking at the population of Mexico versus Cayman Islands, I would go for Mexico, even though it is definitely not a top tier sport there. Let's be honest.
Look, the Cayman Islands are coming off a really strong win against Bermuda back in May. So back on that winning record. What else? Hang on, and they smashed Guyana as well. Absolutely smashed them. So come on, going for the three-peat.
And the Cayman Islands will be full of expats, and they are tax exiles. So maybe they've influenced the referee at a time.
It sounds like a great place to go. Cayman Islands rugby. No one gets on the phone anymore, do they? Hang on, Cayman Islands rugby. Get the tappers out. I'll come live in the Cayman Islands. Surely that's a nice place to live. Let me Google it a little bit more.
It's very sunny. And it is.
I'm not used to that. It looks nice. This is already starting to sound like our streams we have. We end up looking at all the great places around the world. Oh, they got caves. Oh, crystal caves. Oh, Cayman Islands. Let's go. Damn, screw you, Mexico. It's all about the Cayman Islands.
So yes, I've got no idea what their world rankings those two teams are, but that's the only international according to Rugby Pass coming up this weekend. And,
Cayman Islands 49th apparently.
Okay, and Mexico.
Oh, hang on. Mexico 42nd.
Oh yes, Mexico. That's right then. Mexico are the favourites in this one. Absolutely.
Let's go Cayman Islands. I know there was just a quick search, so I could be off if it's not up to date. But we're going for 40s. sort of table. Let me hang on. We'll look at men's. We'll look down the 40s. So as of right now, the Cayman Islands they've actually lifted up a place from 51st to 50th. And Mexico 42nd. They've dropped from 40th in this latest update. So there you go. That's straight from World Rugby.
In Mexico, in decline.
Yeah. Cayman Islands in a run of form.
So yes, so it's as I say, international rugby has pretty much come to a close. that will be the curtain. That'll close the curtain on international rugby for the for the week. And I'll be honest, whilst we will give you scores, I'll give you the score of that game next weekend, or next week, sorry, on Monday. I cannot guarantee that we'll be able to give you any insight as to what actually happened during the game, because I say I don't think Sky will be broadcasting that one.
Who's at home?
Mexico.
Oh, they might have a camera there.
At Deportivo Harp Helu. With my and yes, sorry, there for the butchering of the pronunciation, but I've got no idea how you would pronounce that. But there you go. Any rugby news from last week?
Tell you what, I was just looking up more of a history about Mexico and the Cayman Islands. The biggest defeat ever by the Cayman Islands, or for the Cayman Islands, is to Mexico back in 2019, 105-7. So history not on the side there of the Cayman Islands. You know what? The biggest news I seen was that Six Nations has a new logo, and it looks like some little kid's just drawn it and sent it to someone, and it looks like rubbish. Aside from that, no, not really. Not really much. Look, Northern Hemisphere's gone back to just club rugby now, and we're all gone to sleep about rugby. So no.
Oh, yeah, it's definitely interesting as a new logo, isn't it?
The new logo, yeah.
So the old logo for the Six Nations was basically a rugby ball with the colours of the different countries. So you've got red for Wales, dark blue for Scotland and France, green for Ireland, and a light blue for Italy, with a sort of the blue bit going off the top to make it look like number 6. So you had a bit of 6, then the circle for the 6 was the ball, and that kind of makes sense. So I can see where that all comes from. Now, the new one, has obviously got sponsored by Guinness. So Guinness has to be over the top of it, but has a red ball for some reason. When so some sort of lava kind of ball, and then M6N, with the M being some sort of funky kind of swirly kind of M there at the front. This is a great one for our podcast people. And then the women's one is in purple, but again, the font for the M and the N and for the M for men and the W for women and the N for nations is different. So it's a bit they're trying to be funky, aren't they? And
you know what it reminds me of? It feels like, for me, it's like you're driving, you're cruising down a freeway or a highway or whatever part of the roads come from that you call it. The big things where you're up high and you go fast. You're cruising down there and it's like, oh, I want to take the M6N turn off. And that's the sign you see. That right there. That's what you see. It looks just like a freeway or highway, because the UK has what, M6 and all that sort of garb, don't they?
Yep.
And what they call. So that's what first thing that springs to my mind, just M6N. Weird. Goodness, what sucks is there's no representation. Like, what is this competition about?
Yeah, the other one, you could see the colours of different countries. You could see how this one looks like a chewing gum logo, or a vape or a vape logo, right? It doesn't actually look like. So it does again. The ball is is stylized and faded in the background, so it's not even obviously a rugby ball either. Whereas the old one, it was a tradition. You could tell it was a rugby ball. It had a kind of the 6, had the colours. It was all part of it. Now, these new ones, I say, they're a bit crap. Is the M6 the road to Birmingham, Paul? It goes north of Birmingham. Yes, absolutely.
There you go. See? It's a subsidiary road of the M6/N.
And as Simon says, the M6 associated with reference to all rugby league clubs in England. Yes, absolutely. Yeah, because it doesn't. I said the M62 would be the your rugby league one, because that goes from Lancashire to Yorkshire. So the M62 would link 90% of your basically your rugby league clubs together. Not the M6 so much. The M6 is further south than that.
You know what this does, though? You pair this up with the god-awful Rugby World Cup logo that we got dished out, slapped in the face with last year. And now this. I mean, can't wait to see what they do to Super Rugby or the Rugby Championship or whatever else. God, I hope they don't touch that.
So yeah, it's awful. I mean, actually, it's not awful. It's just bleh, a bit poor. It just doesn't. Yeah, it's not actually awful per se. It's just bleh.
It looks all right. Like it kind of like the red, and that's quite striking. But I just don't like the fact that it doesn't actually tell you. You know, you should be able to tell what that competition is. You know, like if I read that and say the Guinness M6N. I literally have no idea what that competition is. If you know, as a casual rugby fan, if you were, you know, if you just see that slapped up in the window.
When you want a Guinness flavored vape, that's what you go for.
If you were walking by a pub and you've seen that slapped in the window, are you going to jump in and be like, "Oh, I want to see what that's all about"? You got to look and go, "Nah, I'll go to the next one." We've got the EPL logo or something that I actually recognise.
Yeah, so that's not impressed by that at all. I don't mind the idea of putting the M there to say the men's Six Nations, W for women's Six Nations. That's fine. I don't mind doing that. Fine. That's all fine. So I'm not complaining about that. And I can see a whole bunch of people getting on the high horse. It's the Six Nations. It's not the men's Six Nations. So I've got no problem with that piece. It's just the design of the logo is just crap at the end of the day, from my point of view.
Agreed.
I wonder what the under-20s one looks like as well, because there is an under-20s men's Six Nations. So I don't know. So no, that one had flown over my head. Actually, I'd missed that one, thankfully. Oh bollocks! It hasn't actually restored my
I don't know how new or old this is, but have a look at the under 26 nations. The U looks like a kicking tee, and it's green. I don't like it.
Oh dear, it's on there. So the under 20s.
So you've got a green. So similar sort of style, right?
Ooh.
Yeah, similar sort of style in the fonts, but I quite like the kicking tee representing the U though. Well, I presume it's a kicking tee.
I get what you. Okay, I didn't jump out to me as a kicking tee, but it's supposed to be. Oh,
that's what it looks like to me. I could be horrifically wrong.
But yeah, it's just I'm not sure that. No, I don't like that. It's just the yellow is just too vibrant. It's just it hurts my eyes. But yes, it is Northern Hemisphere based news really, rather than Southern Hemisphere. Because I think last week we talked about we talked about Razor and did we talk about the? No, we didn't actually. No, last week we didn't talk about this. Oh, this is fantastic. Yeah, so we do have some Southern Hemisphere news. I just need to go back to my the messenger we had, where Razor apparently was not making excuses. Okay, let's be very clear here. These are not excuses. These are just clarifications as to why we've lost games this year. But I'll tell you, they really sound like excuses to me. He's provided context apparently around. And we just haven't quite put it all together. That's not true. The framework's there, the structure's there, but probably the consistency is a big thing for us. Probably, really? Okay. In-game dealing with refs. And look, you put context to it. We got 14 tests, the most in any calendar year by a team. Well, we'll go through some details and prove that's not true. The most in this calendar year, but not in any calendar year. Okay. But I don't see why that means you lose because you play more games. But there we go. And 9 of them away, and 2 against the world's number 1 team. You always play South Africa twice. So clearly, every year that Steve Hansen and Graham Henry were in charge, when they were playing South Africa and Australia, they had the same problems. Right? They've all played 9 games overseas as well. I can find many reasons. I don't want to make any excuse around it, because it sounds like you are. I just want to put context to it. We have learned a lot. I think we have learned quickly. Okay, and we could have probably learned in games a bit quicker. Yeah, no shit, Sherlock, and made some braver calls potentially. But yes, I've never ever heard an All Blacks coach before put into context these sort of things. Have you?
Not in that sort of style of way that he's saying it. No, but it's fair to say he's not a typical coach, is he? I think he's still, he's still adapting very much to the changes and the differences. You don't get away with things, and you got a lot more attention on you. So you can't be, and you're not getting the results. It's easy to be that happy, slappy, put a spin on everything, and when you're winning, but when you're not winning and you're under a bit of scrutiny, you can't get away with as much in that sort of style. So I think it's probably against his sort of style as a coach, I reckon. And he's learning how to deal with it.
I love Nocturne Wright's comment. Robertson needs a couple more lucky injuries to get better.
That's so true. That is so true.
Oh, dear. And just to make things really fun, we know that France are touring New Zealand next year, and we've already had the hoo-ha over the fact that France, surprise, surprise, just like they do every single year, will not be selecting players from the 2 teams that make the top 14 final. Now, this caused a massive hoorah around New Zealand, where they're sending a second string team. How dare they? But now apparently the All Blacks and or New Zealand Rugby are now in talks to move one of those home tests to the USA, because hey, that's what we know. Because we're fan centric and we love our fans, we're going to take one of the 3 test matches, one of only like 5 test matches, or 6 test matches a year they get to play. Well, actually, no, they had 14 tests, right? 9 of them overseas. It means 5 test matches. So one of the 5 test matches, I remember, you only play 1/3 of your test matches in New Zealand, and you're going to take it overseas. I mean, just after your head coach has complained about playing too much away, you decide to maybe take a game over. How out of touch are these guys with the actual rugby following fan base?
We talked about this a million times. We talked about this. Why it's no full stadiums here? Why? It's the same thing. It's like all they see is dollar signs. Rather than try and fill out a stadium at home, give your team the best support, the home support. They just see the dollar signs of, hey, let's go to America. It's nice to have the American support, as in, like, it's good to see it's actually getting. I think it's getting better year on year. America is supporting rugby better than it was, and which is promising given that they're getting the World Cup over there. But geez, New Zealand rugby has no interest of that. They're not trying to grow the game; they're trying to grow the back pocket. That's what they're all about, and it's an excuse, isn't it? So, no, we're doing it for the good of the America. No, you're doing it for the money because you think you're going to get more money about it. But how can you, when you're going to have to fly all those people over to America, you have to put them all up in America rather than, half of them will be playing or staying in their own home city. It baffles to believe how they're actually going to make any more money out of that, or it's going to be better for the team in any way at all. Just out of touch still. And it just dampens the interest even more.
And Dr. Silver Lake might be calling for the US test proposal. Look, New Zealand Rugby were doing this kind of thing, playing games over there well before this. So yes, I'm sure Silver Lake won't be anti it if it raises more money, because hey, they're in it for the money. New Zealand Rugby is supposed to be in it for the fans and for the good of the sport. But yeah, New Zealand Rugby are in it as much as Silver Lake. Did I read that next year's Grand Slam tour will have the Island game in Chicago? Yes, I think that's also true. just like the All Blacks played Ireland and Chicago before November tour. For the very first time Ireland ever beat New Zealand, the All Blacks. That's again nothing new there on that one. Is it then technically a Grand Slam tour as you're not beating all the 4 home nations teams in their home nations? Does anybody care? At the end of the day,
with an asterisk. Yeah, that's correct. Yeah.
Yeah, they beat all 4 teams. That's it. End of story. Where they decide to play, who cares? Yeah. Grand Slam with an asterisk, who says. Simon Hughes says, I don't know what Silver Lake have done for New Zealand rugby. I don't think they've done anything. No, exactly. I think about 2 or 3 months ago, I might have mentioned that they actually started hiring people eventually for this for the New Zealand was it New Zealand Rugby Commercial? I think it's called. It's actually the joint venture. The CEO who came in has decided to leave already because New Zealand rugby people, Blazers, don't like his suggestions on improving the sport or making money. So he's already resigned and is moving on. They actually started hiring people. So something might happen eventually. How slow have they been? It is unreal. The reason I know this is because folks, I have an alert set up with on Seek. So that Seek emails me every time New Zealand Rugby hires somebody, or any rugby related jobs are put up on Seek. Yes. So I think Auckland Rugby, for example, are looking for a new NPC coach. If anyone fancies it, that pops up in my inbox recently for that one. Technically Chicago was part of Ireland and Boston, New York. Dearie me. An exciting new Players Association comp that Nickel announced. Really, I didn't read that one. Have you heard of that one?
Is that not the Rebel competition, or that World Rugby is really trying to squash? I have read about that over the week.
Oh, was that the one that
we talked about a couple of weeks ago? I agree that they're trying to squash that, and it wouldn't be sustainable. I'm not sure if it's the same one.
That might be the same one we talked about a couple of weeks ago, which again, and there was also the talk, obviously, of New Zealand Rugby Players Association splitting from New Zealand Rugby, but that one's also
Didn't that fall apart already.
So I don't think any of those are real on that one. So the who are with New Zealand Rugby? Yeah, so that actually got agreed because they made an agreement with the provinces around changing the around that, and the New Zealand Rugby Players Association are back on board with New Zealand Rugby and the provinces. They're all happy families now. We did talk about that a month or 2 or 3 months ago, and basically the provinces said something along the lines of, the people that have to be put on the board with New Zealand Rugby with provincial rugby experience can have any experience at all. They don't have to be on a provincial board, and that was how much they backed down, and the players backed down on everything else. So yes, that one didn't really happen. There's this rebel one. That's the World Rugby one. We'll see if it comes off. If someone wants to pour a whole bunch of money into and get nothing out of it, then go for it, because I can't see on that one. So there was those pieces, and also, oh dear, how out of touch can you be? So, Steve, if you were to be head of a group, head of a company, you were going to be, you'd made the biggest ever loss your company's ever made. You're laying off, making 40 people redundant. Would you expect to get a £300,000 bonus, and to be the highest paid sports administrator in the country in the UK?
I accept all that money. Yes, I accept. With a completely clean conscience.
because apparently during COVID, you did take less money and for longer than other people. The fact that you were still getting paid over $500,000, over £500,000 a year. But hey, you by dropping like £100,000 or something for longer than they did. I mean, that really made a big difference. And so hence, yes, you must get your money back. Obviously, for making that big sacrifice and putting in all of those hard yards for that.
I'm glad you've recognised my contribution to the sport.
So, to be honest, okay, so apparently this is a long-term deal where they get money, they get the percentages of their bonuses depending on certain things. Okay, now one of that is income, and with the new deal for the National Stadium, which apparently is 12 years, not 10 years, so not quite as good as people reported. So they got 100% on that one. They got 100%, I think, on or something about male participation not dropping, not increasing, but just not dropping. And they got like something like 70% on the fact that on results by the professional teams or by the top tier teams, which women's rugby did a lot of the heavy lifting for on that one. With the way that the men's team lost quite a few games. On women's participation, 0%. On diversity and inclusion, 0%. But hey, I'll still keep most of the 300. So I think he lost about maybe 20 or 30,000 on that. But when your bonus is 300,000 on top of your 700,000 base salary, and you're getting over $1 million, who cares about a bit of inclusion and diversity and increasing the women's game?
Where do I sign up? Give me that application form. Surely you can't do any worse, right? You just tick some boxes, sign some papers, just try and limit the damage until the very end of the of your tenure, and then you can go out with a pile of cash. It's just crazy.
This is the RFU one, yes, not the Premier Rugby one, Simon. Oh yeah, I mean, on this guy's watch, four professional teams in the UK have gone bust. I believe that, so that'll be Wasps, Worcester Warriors, London Irish, and Jersey, I think, is the fourth one there. So clearly running the professional game well. I'm sorry, but it is farcical. We think that the New Zealand Rugby Union are kind of out of touch, but boy, oh boy, this one takes the biscuit in my. So yeah, RFU, clearly a joke.
That's what they're all about, aren't they? All these like these chairmen and it's like why are they in the job? You know, it's like, are you in the job for the reason of trying to better the sport? Or are you just there to jump on for a couple of years, grab a pay packet, limit the damage, limit the capitulation of wherever you're in charge of, pocket the money and run away and, you know, be forgotten about, but still grab a whole bunch of money. You know, it's like the mindset is not to do what you're supposed to do. It's just a cash grab and run away. You know, it's like they're not invested in what the position actually is. Yep.
The so they expect to make a loss last year. World Cup years do, because they have less test matches at Twickenham or whatever it's called nowadays, Allianz Stadium or whatever it is. The key is not to linger too long before your screw ups catch up with you.
2 years.
So yes, but look, in the last 5 years, his base salary has gone up from $430,000 a year to $742,000 a year. It's nearly doubled in 5 years. I'll ask you folks, if anyone else has doubled their salary or even increased their salary by 75% in the last 5 years, well bloody done. Because doing the same job, that is, for the fact, if you got promoted, clearly you're going to get more money. But if you're doing the same job 5 years later and you're getting $312,000 more, that's just nuts. So
if you're getting 10% more than you're getting over a 5 year period, and these days you're doing bloody well.
So So he only got 77.5% of the bonus that was on offer. He could have got more if he'd done better with the participation of community rugby for women and girls, or rugby inclusivity, which, remember, he scored 0% on both of those. So yes. Oh dear. I'm not sure how much more I can rant on about this, to be honest. Let's move on to
those gas bills are I heard those gas bills are getting pretty bad over there in the UK. just buy yourself some more blankets, Nocturnal. You'll be right.
So, Ireland versus the Wallabies. Look, the Wallabies had a cracking start to this game. And got themselves up 10-0 after the first quarter. Ireland were pretty abysmal by their standards. Let's be honest on this one. The number of turnovers lost, 23 by Ireland in this game compared to 16 by Australia. The number of knock-ons and just it's other things was nuts, and you can tell that by actually scrums were 7 and 8 in this one, so pretty much the same across both of them. But yeah, the handling in this one was pretty poor in this one, and Australia got themselves in the lead there. Jorgensen sliding in the corner. Van der Fleer got himself over, so it was 5-13 at half time, and look, a famous upset victory was on the cards at that point. Let's be honest, Ireland were not playing well. Australia, again, also error prone, but actually got the points on the board. Would they wanted more? Absolutely, but yeah, decent lead at half time for the Wallabies. Into the second half though, and Ireland got themselves a penalty, and Caelan Doris tried to take the lead at 15-13. And the fact they were only 15-13 at this point, with an hour in, and then trailing 15-19 after a couple of penalties with just over 10 minutes to go, is amazing when you consider that territory. Ireland had 69% of the territory, which means pretty much every single time Australia went forwards, they scored some points, because, boy, it was nuts. 67% territory apparently on another, by Nocturnal Rights, on another set of stats. Now, these ones are a bit strange because it suggests that 56% of territory was in basically the Wallabies 22, i.e. over half the game played in the Wallabies 22, and yet most of the possession seems to be just outside their 22. Either way, way more than half of the game was played in the Australian half, which was just nuts. The Aussies only had 9% possession actually in the Ireland 22. They really did not get much opportunities there at all. So the fact they came away with those points is good. Unfortunately for them, look, they got ground down in the end, and Ireland got a late try to win this one, 22-19. Unsurprisingly, a knock-on finished it for Australia. But so it was a really poor end to the year for Ireland, in all honesty. This is not the kind of performance we expect to see from them, and it was very much hit and miss. But your thoughts on the game?
I think you talk about the Wallabies going into half time. I think they would have been, before the game, if you said to them any point lead at half time, they would have taken it with both hands, going into this matchup. And even considering the final result, I feel like the Wallabies, although should be disappointed with the position they put themselves in, overall, when you look through that match and some stats from it, they should be pretty happy with that whole tour, let alone the final score in that game. But yeah, look, they played well. Stats are a crazy thing to read sometimes. They only entered the 22 3 times, the Wallabies, which is, and to be that close, sure, you can kick goals from outside the 22, and that's what they did. But boy, what the chances they had and the opportunities they had throughout that game to be in that match, let alone controlling it for the majority of that game, that's a really strong tenacious performance from the Wallabies. It's something I don't think I would have really credited them for in a performance sort of wise of that sort of game. It's not what you really expect for the Wallabies, but when they got forced their hand into that position, they come away with it really, really well. They led that game for nearly an hour, just looking through some stats of mine, which is crazy to look at. But yeah, solid, determined, and clinical, I guess, from the Wallabies perspective, to take everything they could get and really push Ireland right to the end. And it's crazy. After seeing this game, it's a bit like both teams were pretty scrappy, but it's hard to say Ireland were bad, yes, but the way that the Wallabies played, you'd almost say that was a good game for them. And for them to beat Ireland, sure, they need to be a little bit better, but I think Ireland will be more disappointed with the way they played despite winning, and the Wallabies will be happy with how they played despite losing, if that makes sense. Being the final game of their tour, yeah, we saw the last couple of weeks were pretty scrappy from all the teams involved, weren't they? So not surprising that's how it ended up, but I think the Wallabies can hold their heads up really high about how this tour has gone from them, and that's not a great game, but on paper they'll look back and say, we pushed Ireland pretty hard.
They pushed one of the top teams in the world within 3 points, right? So yeah. Absolutely. Not surprising, Aussie a far better place than a year ago. Not hard to be, but Joe is doing the right stuff. Yeah, it's kind of interesting, isn't it? You here we are in a season where they've had a record loss against Argentina. They've gone on tour to the Northern Hemisphere, 1-2, lost 2, and people are talking about, geez, can we get Joe Schmidt renewed and get his contract extended, because it's only until the end of the Lions, and you're kind of like, so some of the clearly, look, yeah, they are heading in the right direction. I think we expected them to come to this come on tour to this Grand Slam tour and definitely lose to England, have a tough game against Wales, and then lose to both Scotland and Ireland comfortably. And what have they done? They've beaten England. They thumped Wales. It wasn't a close one like they lost to them last year during the Rugby World Cup. Then sure, they lost to Scotland, but they've pushed Ireland close. So they are miles ahead of where I think we expected them coming into this series. Sure, Joe Smith's point, there is pointed out that they do not have another test match or another game until the British and Irish Lions arrive. So all of his preparation for that has got to be done in conjunction with the Super Rugby coaches. Now, look, I can't see them. If you are a Super Rugby coach of one of the Australian teams, so Wales beat Australia, 40-6 at the World Cup. If you are the head coach of one of the Australian Super Rugby teams, you are going to be doing everything in your power to help Joe Schmidt. Let's be honest, you're going to be on board with him. He's got people positive about rugby, which is going to help you with people turning up. So I can't see them, him having to fight against the coaches in a similar way that he won't get the cooperation. He'll get the cooperation that someone like Steve Borthwick does not get from the Premiership teams, because it's about them winning, and they don't give two hoots about what's happening at the England level. Really, let's be honest.
Hey, if I'm Rugby Australia, I'm waiting for him to get off that plane when he comes back, and I'll be saying, let's have a talk next week or as soon as possible, because I don't see why you wouldn't want him. I would have the confidence in what he's done so far to put confidence back in him to say, take us to the World Cup. I don't want him. I don't think the Wallabies can afford to let other teams or other nations see his contract coming towards the end with the Wallabies, i.e., next year when that, around that Lions tour time, he'll be wanted. He'll be a wanted man. There's no question about it from what he's done. I would want to lock him in as soon as possible and say, hey, look, we like what you've done with the team. We like how you've changed, the positivity and the impact of the side. We want more. We want another 2 years from you, and see what he does, or how he he wants to commit back to Rugby Australia on that side of things. And you got to remember, Super Rugby now, there's only 4 Australian teams contributing to the Wallabies as well. So they should be stronger. They should be more competitive. If they can be, that's going to, again, increase that interest in Australia, in the Wallabies. And that's what they need. They need that very, very desperately. If they can have a really good Super Rugby season, get a couple of teams competing, going deep into the competition, I'm talking semi-finals, then they've got a really good, I think a really good stepping stone to step into the Wallabies, players in form, players playing at a higher level, competing better, beating New Zealand teams. That's the goal. And if they can do that, conjunction together, they could be in a good place. I feel like the Wallabies have really strode forward this season in leaps and bounds.
Not surprisingly, ARU will need a lot of money to secure Joe. Family reasons for stepping down. No, well, I'm not so sure, to be honest with you. Look, Australia to New Zealand is nowhere near as far. I don't think he would have taken this job on in the first place if family reasons were going to be a problem long term. So, to my mind, clearly, I don't know Joe Schmidt. I've never talked to him. I've not seen. I don't know what the situation is, but clearly his family situation has settled down. Isn't the fact that he was willing to go back and help the I've gone blank. The Blues first, and then the All Blacks, and then moved on to this. Not sure. It says it's his wife's turn apparently. Okay, we'll see. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it's just 2 years, and then he has to come back for family reasons. We'll see. We'll see how that pans out. But yeah, as you say, if I was Ireland, I would be putting the pen in his but saying what can we do to make this work. And it doesn't have to. It won't necessarily be money, right? It might be, you know what, how do we set you up with the family life here, or how much time do you need to go back to New Zealand? We'll have to wait and see. So we'll see.
How to build a coaching team around him that can execute his plans in his absence as well. Like maybe slightly more of a setup around him to to be like, hey, you're going to have to cover this period. Here's the plan. Here's what I want the team to try and work on and execute. And this is how we want to work on things. Have a better support, have a stronger support around him to make it work. No, I agree. I don't think. A lot of these coaches, it's not all about money. Some of them it is, Eddie, but for others, it's not so much. It's more about their lifestyle and getting things that they need, families, travels and stuff like that. So, it'll be interesting to see. I think they need to keep him in. And that's the other thing. Does he step down, but he stays there in the capacity of what do they call them, director of rugby or whatever it is, sort of thing now, where he's still got a very large input, but he's not the face. Work something out.
A bit like Razzie did with Neymar. So maybe there are ways of working it, but we'll see. So I can't think of any Australian coach right now who's good enough for the Wallabies. But working as a director of rugby or mentor might be the way forwards. We'll see. He's done succession before. It worked pretty well with Andy Farrell. Let's be honest. He knows how to do that kind of thing. So if he has someone in mind, I mean, Laurie Fisher is the one that I think he's actually probably better as a hands-on coach than he is as a head coach. But he is he's got the respect within rugby circles, I think, to do that. But we'll see how that goes. So, Bruce, why did the Wallabies team seem to struggle during the season? Well, the reason they struggled this year is because, basically one of the reasons they keep losing players overseas, right? Constantly. The player drain from Australia is much quicker than it is from South Africa or from New Zealand. And also, they don't have the volume of players that New Zealand and South Africa do. And so they end up having a much lower, so they're much more susceptible to injuries. And they're much more reliant on individual players. Historically, we've seen that mean that players like James O'Connor in his youth, Quade Cooper, Curtly Beale, there was another one, Digby Ione, wasn't he? I think he was part of that kind of crowd who basically felt they could do what they wanted, right? They just didn't turn up to some sort of sponsors meetings, all these kind of things. Hey, I don't have to. So there's a whole bunch of that kind of stuff that they end up having more self-importance. Now, I don't think the current crowd are at that level. I think they've much improved in that kind of sense. But historically, that's definitely been part of it. As you can see, over-reliance, players being entitled because, hey, who else is there? Are you going to drop me? Go for it, mate. And you can see how players can have that attitude in that part of it.
And you got to remember, Australia's got a lot more competition for elite sports people as well, with rugby league and AFL, especially as two massive draws for out of school elite athletes. So, and then of course you've got your other elite sports. There's a lot of Australian NBA basketball players now, and of course you got a lot of players that go play NFL over to America and your part of the world, Brucey. So yeah, there's a lot more options, especially as those sports become more globalized now as well, especially your American sports, right? It's a lot easier to get that pathway than it used to be. Plus, you've always got the league, the NRL, you've always got AFL, and that's where a lot of that goes. So, yeah. And, of course, you've got a fully professional football league, as in the round ball, as you call soccer in America. And, of course, you've got the NBL and the basketball fully professional league as well. So the options in Australia are a lot more. Like here in New Zealand, sure, you got the Warriors, you got the league, but there's limited places you can go. Whereas Australia, you can go to a number of professional sports franchises over there. So there's a lot more options for the elite sport person to go.
So yeah, Simon says there are 7 professional football sports competitions in Australia. Wow. Okay. I'm not quite sure what those all are, but there we go. But so yeah, you obviously got rugby, AFL, NRL, soccer or football. What are the other 3? Anyway, we don't need to know on that one. But let's actually review a few of the teams, shall we? For their seasons. I've not managed to do all of my stats ready for this week, so some of it will roll over to next week. And we're already 45 minutes in, so let's be honest. We will. So let's start to kick off with how has Razor done this year?
Yeah.
So remember, folks, he had 14 test matches, which, as you can see, looking at this, is the same number as they had in 2003, 2009, 2010, 2012, 2013, 2014, 2016, 2017, 2018, and is less than they had in 2021 and 2009. So his argument about having 14 test matches, I don't really think holds any water, to be honest with you, on that one. Don't Australia play cricket and netball as well? Yes, I'm not sure they're football sports though, Bruce. That was the point I was trying to.
You can kick a cricket ball if you want. Would hurt your foot, but yeah, the cricket.
Yeah, not to right here says Robertson gets a pass. No more. Judgment will be based on next year. If we look at the number of losses he's had this year, with 5, that's the most. With 4, that's the most losses that the All Blacks have had ever since 2000. So the same. They equals 2009 and 2002. 22. Sorry. Remember in 2022 they also had that draw as well though, and they did play a few less games. But still, this is the most losses in a year. I haven't highlighted this year as being a red year because he made 29% losses, okay, and 30% and above was a red as far as the All Blacks are concerned. But I should have marked off the 4 losses as being a bad year because that is the most losses they've had in a year. For that one. So look, not a great start to his career. Let's as a coach, let's be honest, especially as we were all saying, all the media was saying how bad his predecessor was, Ian Foster. Ian Foster only had 3 losses last year, but that was an abysmal year. Apparently, it was awful. So it him to be this great savior, which was the kind of the media narrative. He clearly hasn't been, has he, Steve?
The great savior, the popular choice. Oh, jeez, no. I mean, were we ever going to see a great first season? Did anyone really honestly think he was going to come into the All Blacks and just demolish everyone and all coming? I think there was one result that was bad, and that was the Argentina game. I think other than that, I think it's been an acceptable year. If you went through a normal year, any calendar year of the All Blacks, and said, take out Argentina, that was the bad loss. If you said you're going to lose twice to South Africa in South Africa, and you're going to lose to only France on your end-of-year tour, and you're still playing Ireland and England and France, of course, as well, I'll take that. I would take that. South Africa, sure, they're world number 1, right? But just beating South Africa in South Africa, doesn't matter what ranking they are on the world, is tough to do. It's very, very tough to do. So I think he's had one result that's put his whole season under jeopardy. If he beat Argentina in that game, Wellington, wasn't it? That whole cursed place of Wellington, would we be talking about it as a bad year? I don't know. I do agree that the media is too nice. I feel like they're not scrutinizing him as any other All Black coach. But if I had to be honest, if you look at just results only, take out Argentina. I think it's been not a good year, but it's been a just over average year, expected year.
I think it's definitely been a below average year. Because we've had those losses. You take out that one game, and you can say, because it's a post Rugby World Cup year, because there's turnover of players, because of that, then I can understand it. Sure, but I think it sounds like New Zealand expects to win every single game. Yes, they do. Yes. Absolutely, they do.
Yep.
And they know they did it one year in 2013, right? You got to remember, 2019 was it 2000? Sorry, I'm trying to go back to which year it was. Go back to 2007, for example, where they didn't win the Rugby World Cup. They only lost 2 games that year, right? But that was a bad year because they didn't win the Rugby World Cup. So yes, there is an expectation here that the All Blacks always win. And look, if you look at this, they haven't lost more than 4 games in a year since this century, right? Which tells you they are going to win the vast majority of games. Okay, so I think it wasn't just the fact that you're right that as far as the result goes, that Argentina one was the only one that was really bad per se. The problem with that was the highest ever score by a team against New Zealand in New Zealand. They only beat England by 1 point in one of those in one of the tours down here in New Zealand, and it wasn't a convincing win over them back in Twickenham either. So it's not just been the results; the performances have been less than convincing as well. Let's be honest about this.
You've got to compare that with that, though. Tell me, in 2017, how convincing were those 11 victories that they had that year? Okay, the Lions, that's probably a bad example. That's what I mean. A win is, I hate the cliche of a win is a win, right? But when you look back on history and say you go 2004, now they won 9 games. It doesn't matter if they won all those 9 games by 1 point. When you look back at it now,
in 2 years' time, we'll have forgotten about it.
Yeah,
right.
And we'll look back and say they won 10 games.
And Bruce says, how many wins are required to qualify for the Rugby World Cup? 3 at the Rugby World Cup, right? So because the All Blacks finished top 2 in their pool, i.e., or top in No, second, wasn't it? So top 2 in their pool, they automatically qualify. I say top 3, sorry. They automatically qualify for the next World Cup. So that isn't a problem on that one. Is Alton Leonard-Brown spluttering out in his All Black career?
Yep.
Can Robertson make him a better player?
Nope.
The why isn't Proctor getting more opportunity in that kind of one? We've also got Quinta Pye coming back as well. Anthony Brown needs to look. He has played some very good rugby for the All Blacks, but he's also in the last sort of 3 games, he has picked up 2 yellow cards, and 3 yellow cards. Sorry, so that's 4 games, 2 yellow cards. So yes, from that point of view, maybe it is spluttering out. He hasn't had the greatest ones, but so from an All Blacks point of view, look, not the best year, not the kind of year that was expected from a Razor team. We were expecting 2 losses maybe, and definitely not losing to Argentina at home. That was definitely not on the cards. Comfortable wins over England were also expected. So it's been a wake-up call for the New Zealand public as to Razor is a rookie international coach. He's learning on the job, and that has been a massive wake-up call for the fans at least. But yes, he has got a relatively easy ride. But if he keeps on asking to pick overseas players all the time, that easy ride could stop pretty soon. I think next year.
I think the All Blacks would have expected to probably split that series. Oh no, sorry. I think the public would have expected the All Blacks to split that series in South Africa. And they, again, like you say, they only just snuck past England, etc. But the Springboks only just snuck past the All Blacks. Especially in that first test, if I recall, was 3 points or something along those lines. So, you could twist that back the other way. And no, Argentina beat New Zealand Bruce in Wellington, I think it was. Yeah. Eden Park is still the fortress of how many years now? 20-something years?
Crazy,
so
yeah.
There's no chance of that happening anytime soon. Touch wood. But yeah, in context, you got to look at, I think you just got to look at the results. And yeah, the one outlier, like if he knocked off Argentina in that game, and we looked at this and said 3-11, how differently would you view this?
Yeah. Oh, look at it. And Nocturnal Rights made a good point. South Africa were more brave in their selections of the All Blacks, building more depth. And that has been a big thing also.
If I'm going to be critical of the All Blacks, it wouldn't be their results. It would be more, I think, that in this year, which is predominantly, and for me, primarily, establishing that new depth of talent. And are you good enough to play international rugby, or are you not? Hoskins to Tutu, go home. This is the year to do it. And I don't feel like that has happened. I don't feel like that has happened all 30 years. There you go, Simon. 30 years since they've lost at Eden Park. Crazy stat. No, that'll be my big criticism. The only players that we've really developed are players that we've been forced to use through injury. Sure, it's easy to select a young guy in your squad and just let him sit in the reserves, and then, oh crap, we've got to use him. That's the only way we've established those guys. Great guys they are, brilliant players, but I wish that we had, naturally developed these guys and given them opportunities to shine themselves, rather than their opportunity being like, well, we've got no one else left. Off you go. Have a crack, son.
So, talking of those Springboks, let's have a look at how their year's been. So, look, they have had less games. They've had 13 rather than 14, because that one game clearly makes all the difference.
All the difference.
But 15% the loss rate, which with only 2 losses and 11 wins this year, puts it in the green column from that point of view. And you just got to look at kind of the Razzie effect. Sure, his first year he had 7 losses, but then 1 loss, 5-5, 2-2. Compare that to the beginning of the century, 6-5, 6-5, 4, 3, 7. He really has got them singing, and on that point of view. But again, you're looking at these numbers. We've got, so I say, 6-5, 6-5, 4, 3, 7. And remember we were saying that the All Blacks' worst one was 4, and that's happened 3 times. So the worst one for was Alistair Coetzee, with 8 losses back in 2016. So different set of expectations here from that point of view. I think the public, though, has an expectation that the Springboks will be competitive and at the top end. But I think they're more accepting of the fact that we 1 or 2 losses every year. And this year is their, apart from 2019, where they had where they went on to win the Rugby World Cup, had 1 loss and 1 draw. This is as good as it gets. The last 2 years, 2 losses is the sum total. This year, those losses against Ireland at home. Now that one stung because it was at home, and the other one was against Argentina, which was a bit of a shock. Let's be honest on that one. But I think that can be put down to, as you were talking about earlier, about the fact that they have rotated a lot of players. They've used a lot more players than the All Blacks have, and they have built depth, and they are looking forward 4 years much more so, or it's more obvious that they're looking forward 4 years than a lot of the other teams.
I'm waiting for someone in the comments to chip in with this, but they've used something like 54 players throughout the season or something ridiculously insane, the Springboks.
I have 59 in my head. I don't know why, but maybe
there you go. It was 50 something. Yeah,
some 50 something. It's stupid. Yeah.
How many of the All Blacks used this year? 35. The Springboks have almost used twice the amount of players I would have guessed that the All Blacks have used, which is madness, and that should be massively.
The All Blacks probably the All Blacks will get up to the high 40s because of one game against Japan. Right, but that's one game. Actually, no, 2 games for Japan and Fiji. Take out those 2 games, and you're down to about 25, 26 players. And the only reason you're above 23 is injuries.
Why are we not critiquing the Springboks at the same criteria that we're critiquing the All Blacks in? Why is anything 4 or more losses not getting a big red box?
Because of the different expectations.
Well, why do the Springboks have a different expectation as they are one of the global powers?
Wales have got 11 losses. Okay, we can compare it to Wales, where getting 4 wins is considered good, not 4 losses.
Would you not consider the All Blacks, the Springboks, Ireland as levels or equals when you'd go for expectations on performance?
Ireland long term, no.
No, now
recently yes, but not long term, no.
The last, I would say, since the last couple of World Cups at least.
Sorry, I've not really filled in these as I should have done. I think anything for the Springboks though, no, 6 losses to me. If you look at the historic record, 6 losses is a red, whereas for the All Blacks it's 4, and that just tells you the different level that those teams have been playing on.
See, that's that. You look at that now, and it's incredible viewing here for podcast listeners. But you look at this now, and there's a lot more red in there for South Africa. There's a lot more red, but like you said before, this is how they go. South Africa are masters of that 4-year cycle. The depth, the options, and they very quickly eliminate not good enough players. They know, you get to that year or 2 before the World Cup, you certainly know if you're in that mix or not, and you need good form for a long time. So they really are good at that. And you look at the season alone, and the amount of players they've used, the depth they've developed, and the amount of players that they've got available that have double-figure caps. They know what Test rugby's about, and they can perform. And you couple them with experienced guys, that's why they're so good come business time.
But also look at this. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 coaches this year. Since February, whereas the All Blacks have got 6. There's been much more stability of coaching than you have with the Springboks. Rassie is the only person that's really stood around or been around for more than 1 cycle, right? And that's that again. That's why. That's probably what they're not. Why that we are they've got so many more seasons where they have had those 6, 7, even 8 losses, which the All Blacks haven't had, because it comes down to that stability of, and that's probably political stability of the. So I'm talking politically here. I'm talking sporting here, not country. Politically, the administration will be more stable on that side of things. I'm going to throw up the Australia one for you, the Wallabies, and then I'm going to pop to the little boys' room while you have a quick chat about Joe Schmidt and a season that was looking, and basically how since 2000, look, lots of green early on, and then lots of red. Definitely turned red more recently, since the Rugby World Cup win actually in 2015.
You would almost look at this and say these guys are the opposite of Ireland. You talk about how you wouldn't put Ireland in that sort of picture at the start, and now you would put them in that top 2 or 3 picture. The Wallabies are like the opposite. They were in that picture at the start there, and now they've fallen their way out, which is insane. And the coaching is the same. There's no stability in their coaching either on their side of things. So, yeah, the Wallabies have had a very turbulent last couple of World Cup cycles, which has been a real big undoing for them, and a number of really poor years in there for them as well. So you look at World Cup years, and they typically do respond really, really well to them. 2019 had a good year, obviously previously in 2023, but Eddie Jones is a scumbag, man. Eddie Jones is an absolute scumbag. You take out, this is like talking about the All Blacks and going, you take out Argentina, and it really wasn't that sort of bad. You take out Eddie Jones, and the Wallabies haven't been terrible. But I do like the fact that when they do have a bad year, it's post a World Cup or it's middle of a World Cup. Outside of Eddie Jones, they kind of have decent World Cup years, especially historically. I was saying how they're like an anti-Ireland. Ireland wasn't, that powerhouse before. Now they kind of are. Australia were that powerhouse. They were that island spot, weren't they? And now they've kind of dropped down to where Ireland were, which is, a topsy-turvy table of international rugby. But stability's not there either. Like, look at all those coaching changes. Eddie Jones was really a terrible, terrible call for the Wallabies. But, yeah, it's been a rough ride. I have confidence, though, they're turning it around. I have a bit of confidence. What is Australia's play style, Bruce? How would you describe Australia's play style? It changes so much at the moment because they just don't have that structure. I don't feel like. Do they attack first or defense first? I would say Australia is typically an attacking team. They like to score points, they like to run, and they like to use width. They like to use a good back three. They've not had, and I think this is due to injuries, a good forward pack for a number of years because their best, especially their front rowers, get a lot of injuries, and they've not had, I think, a stable back row. They've had excellent back row players, but they've not had the consistency of back row players. I think their pack has let them down for a couple of reasons. Great players, just not clicking. But I feel like they're an attacking team first, definitely.
Yeah, and also, but again, an intelligent team. They're not going to bash through you. They're going to play through you, right?
Yes.
So it's they're going to try and use guile rather than strength. Even the backs, they're not look, they've had some players who are more powerful runners, but they're not expecting to be power runners on this one. But yeah, you look at this and you say it really was after Checker kind of really turned things round because they had a relatively poor year before that, before the World Cup in 2014 with a 50-50 ratio, whereas he then turned it around with a really good World Cup in 2015. But then he seemed to be a player. The talk of him as a head coach when he was a head coach of Australia was he was an emotional head coach. He wasn't a tactical one. After he left the Wallabies and became a TV pundit and then became the head coach of Argentina, he suddenly became not an emotional coach, but a tactical coach. And it was amazing how he changed people's perceptions of him. But that really, a real couple of bad years in there. Does the Wallabies kind of or the way they've gone up and down, does that reflect basically how Super Rugby has gone up and down as well? And actually, they are a product of the tournament they play in, rather than their own development pathways. So I think that might also be a part of it as well. That as we've seen Super Rugby decline over the last sort of decade, they've also struggled more and more when it became too bloated. They had too many teams. They and it all became a bit of a mess. Whereas sort of prior to that, it was kind of there was actually people who kind of understood the tournament, and then it kind of fell apart. And it looks like the Wallabies have kind of fallen apart in line with that. I would suggest.
I feel like the Wallabies still don't have a pathway. They're still missing that gap between club rugby and Super Rugby, and that they had that for NRC, didn't they? And it never showed its true potential because it wasn't around long enough to do the job. But I still feel like you need that. You need that Curry Cup. You need that NPC. You know, even when you look at France, you need that D2. You know, you need those lower divisions. You need those steady steps because it's like who was it? Nocturnal said before, it's a sink or swim. The Wallabies really do, or Australian rugby really do sink or swim their players when it's like, hey, you've had a really good season for goodness knows out in Hickville, you know, under 25 BC Blues. Come play for the Brumbies. It's such a huge step up for them, for players and everything. Everything's a money problem, Nocturnal. Everything's all about money, but you need that. Players need that progressive step up from that sort of teenage years, have at least a season in that sort of domestic. And I think Australia needs to utilize and try and get more players to the NPC. Like we've seen Tane Edmed, get more, just shove them over there. Those guys that are showing a bit of potential, give them a season in the NPC. Build a partnership with the Brumbies and I don't know, Hawke's Bay or Southland or Otago with anyone, the Force or whatever, it doesn't matter. Build a connection and say, hey, we're going to send you 5 players for the NPC season that we think have a great potential. Let's, give them a crack. What else are they going to do? Just go to the gym and run around a paddock. At least they're training, potentially playing. I think that would be a great draw or a great connection for Australian rugby to do that. But looking at this graph, one man I do feel sorry for is Dave Rennie. I feel like they kicked him out too soon. I feel like they got a bit knee-jerky on that one. And they paid the price, didn't they, with Rampaging Eddie. But I feel like Dave Rennie could have made things better. Yep.
The Wallabies need Jason Mitchell and Nathan Nichols, who worked for Cornflake in his pro career as rugby challenge on the old computer games. Looking at the Pumas, then
best season ever.
Well, you say that, right? And yet, now one of the things you need to be aware of when you look at this graph for the Pumas is pre and post when they get into the Rugby Championship. Their results change dramatically because they're not playing Chile, Brazil, Uruguay as much, and they're playing the Springboks, the All Blacks, and the Wallabies a lot more. And hence, the number of losses post 2012 go up massively because of that. But what does that lead to? That leads to a season like this season where they beat the All Blacks and score more points than any other team has ever scored in New Zealand against the All Blacks. They beat the Springboks, as in one of the only 2 teams to beat the Springboks. The other was Ireland this year. And you do not consider the Pumas to be a top 4 team. So yes, they've got a 50-50 record. This isn't a good year for them. Go back to the 2007 Rugby World Cup. They only lost 2 games that year. But I say that was pre the Rugby Championship. So this is aside from COVID and 2022, or 2020, sorry. This is their best year, or best equal year, with just 6 losses and then 6 wins. The 2015 6 losses, 8 wins was after the Rugby Championships. That was probably their best year. Post the Rugby Championship. But yeah, definitely a year heading in the right direction. Definitely massively from that point of view.
Yeah, this year. I mean, result-wise, true, doesn't look great. I mean, any better than last year, but I look at the way that they've played, and I feel like Argentina went on a bit of a slide with their players they had. They built such a core of their team. They lost a few guys to retirements and just older players like your Sanchez's and a lot of those big front rowers that really helped them up for their real early push days into the Tier 1 competitions. But now I feel like that second, or even you're probably going to say that third wave or third generation of international Argentinian rugby players is starting to actually now start to show their full ability. And I think that with the squad they have, the depth they're building, and the players that are coming up to a level not just to compete, but actually have the confidence and the ability in themselves to know and believe they can beat the best teams in the world, that is the position that they're getting into, rather than just those one-off shocks and that amazing, brilliant performance they pull off once or twice a year. Now it's getting to a point where they're like, they've got that belief and they go into a match believing they could win. And that's what the Wallabies are kind of lacking, because they've got players coming into their system that don't have that belief that they can beat the top teams in the world, whereas Argentina now are developing those sort of guys. I think that's the difference between these two nations right now. I think that's why I see Argentina, the Pumas, on a better upward trajectory because of the mental state of their team, whereas the Wallabies, sure, improving, but they're kind of like getting dragged through the mud a little bit with the way that they're being developed and how they're getting coached with what they're getting from Schmidt. So, yeah, great year for the Pumas. I think they're going to definitely improve, and they're going to start getting over that 50% win.
So Bruce says, sounds like the game is as just as psychological as it is physical. Absolutely. Once 100%. You get up to a certain level, now look, below a certain level, it is psychological. It is physical as well. It's just as physical as it is psychological, right? But when you get above a certain level, where look, the physical differences between players at international level is very, very tiny. It comes down to the psychology side, the attitude side of things, whilst the improvement in the Wallabies feels a bit more fragile to my mind than the Pumas, it feels much more more solid. You think they can bring players in much and develop them much better, whereas with the Wallabies you kind of like, oh geez, if that guy goes down, what's next side of things. So I think you're quite right. It does feel much more solid and heading in the right direction for them. And it's definitely, and as you can see, even if you look at this, the last 3 years compared to previously, that's 3 of their best years since the beginning of the Rugby Championship, right? Sure, 2019 looks like a good year with few losses, but they only had 2 wins, so a lot less games that year that in 2019. Whereas sure, 2014 was equal to these. So these 3 years plus 2014, they're the 4 best years since 2012, and to have 3 of them in your last 3 years shows you that it's consistency. It's not just something that's just it's not a flash in the pan. They're heading in the right way. So Bruce says, so the Wallabies need to work more on tactics. To a degree, yes, but more so just the psychology. Do you go in believing you can win? Do you go in? Are you making desperate moves? Are you going, I'm going to go for that ball, even though it's a 30-70 kind of chance, or 30% of chance of getting that ball at this breakdown, 70% chance of giving a penalty? Or do you have the confidence to know, you know what, we can hold out, and in 2 rucks time I'll have a 50-50 or a 60-40 where I've got a much more better chance of getting it. So it's not just about tactics, but it's about confidence as to, do I need to be taking extra risks? When you take those extra risks, it generally doesn't pay off. And if you don't have the confidence in the other players around you, then you'll be taking more of those risks. You'll be biting in like we've seen from England on defensively, maybe that's a bit more of a system thing. But you won't stay on your man. You won't trust the person on inside you is going to make the tackle. So it's not so much tactics, but trust in the in your teammates and trust in the team as to what they can do, and then that makes and then that just makes your decision making better. And if your decision making is better, you're going to play better at the end of the day. You can still have the same physicality, but if you're making bad decisions, you're going to lose the game. So it's more that side rather than tactics.
They have a lot of confidence players too. I think Pacific Islands are very much like that too. When things are going well, if a team gets a lead and they get that crowd support, they play better. I think Argentina was like that, especially at home. If they could get a good start, they become a very hard team. Even, pre the days of them playing in the Rugby Championship, they could be difficult if they got themselves in front and they got that confidence and that belief that, hey, we're actually doing this, and that's when a team is hard to beat. If you knock them down a couple of pegs and put, 10, 15, 20 points on them before they've got 3 of their own, their head drops. And as soon as you get that situation, the early day Argentinians are very, very much in that system. I feel like the Wallabies fragile is a very good word that you used before. There's a similar. If they lose that confidence, they just don't have that fight to get back into it. But I think they have definitely developed that a lot more this year. But both these sides have a different mental state. I feel like Argentina is at a place now. So, okay, we're down by 10. It's okay. Because we know, they're not just relying on one man to have a great game to drag them through. They know there's probably a good 10 or 12 men in that team at least that can do something brilliant, and the solo opportunity can create from a great kick, just a one-off line break. Something that Argentina's developed guys now that they can rely on. You can't target, Pablo Matera and rely on just shutting down their breakdown is going to just shut down their game. They've got plenty more weapons.
Absolutely. Now, Bruce, so most likely if a team loses confidence, they don't play well. Absolutely. If you don't have confidence in your own ability, and you don't have confidence, you think twice before you do things. And by thinking twice, immediately you do it slower. So immediately you're not playing so well on a lot of these things. One of my best hockey coaches, which he used to play, would just tell us how that he had faith that we could do things. And you weren't. And as a left back with very few ball skills, who so basically was tackle and get rid of the ball was my kind of tactic. Generally, when someone says, actually, you know what, Paul, I think you can play a bit. You can actually take 2 or 3 touches before you pass it. It means I'm not just making hurried, get rid of this thing all the time. I'm actually taking time and actually getting proper passes away. And so someone puts that confidence in you, you play better. Now, clearly, I am not a player. I am not international quality. It's different, but those same sort of principles will apply to those players as well. Now, look, we're an hour and a half in, and we've got through 4 out of the 10 tier 1 teams. So I think we'll leave the Six Nations teams to next week, and then our review of the Super Rugby squads can be the week after. So we haven't got through all the teams this week, and that's absolutely fine because hey, it's the off season for us. I know all you people in Europe will be going, but what do you mean the off season? We've got all these club games going on. To be honest, sorry, it's not real rugby. No, it is real rugby. Don't get me wrong. I'm just not following it. There's got a lot of other things on my plate at the moment, and so I can't watch that much rugby. Any final thoughts?
Not so much. No, look, final thoughts. It's been a very good interview tour for the Southern Hemisphere. Since we're predominantly, New Zealand based, we'll be biased. We'll be in our backyard. I think it's been a really good tour. I think the All Blacks particularly can come out of this, and sure, they probably won't hold their heads relatively high, but I think they've had a good tour. I think they've exceeded what the expectation was going into it. Certainly our expectation. We were looking at a potential 2 to 3 losses. You were looking at 2. I was saying possibly 3. So to come away with just 1, sure, win, lose 1 or 3 points don't matter. You know, it's the win, the loss has been good. The Wallabies have shown remarkable improvements. The Springboks continue to be dominant and developing an army of rugby players, and the Pumas are showing that they're actually a tier 1 nation that is one that you should fear. So yeah, from a Southern Hemisphere point of view, I think we're trending in the right direction, getting back that dominance that I think it let slip probably over the last 6 to 8 years. So yeah, all well. And now Ireland's starting to question themselves that they're really that good. You see that in the media. There's a lot of self-doubt going on in the Irish camps, especially after that Australia game, that the team is declining, which I find very interesting. And I kind of feel like replying to them and say, well, I said that a year ago. So there we go. Yeah, great for the Southern Hemisphere.
It was a cracking one, as you say. The All Blacks got better results than we expected, as did Australia. South Africa, as you say, cemented their position. And sure, Argentina only won one game. They beat Italy convincingly, but they were only 3 points away from Ireland. And Ireland a hell of a scare. It came down stuck a bit against France at the end of it all. But yeah, had a good season overall. And prove that they can actually put in a big performance like they did against Italy and back it up the following week, which a lot of people didn't think they could do. One win, 2 losses doesn't look great for Argentina, but the teams they were facing in Ireland and France are 2 of the top 4 teams, and we know there was a gap between the top 4 and everybody else. So you say all the Southern Hemisphere teams, or all the Rugby Championship teams, all had decent tours. Absolutely. So everybody, stay safe, and as I say, we'll review the Six Nations tour November windows and also their seasons next week.